Some towns are built on secrets, others are built on blood. Welcome to Elijah's TV, where stories don't entertain you, they remember you. Morning arrived without ceremony. The storm had passed, but Greyhaven hadn't returned to normal. Daylight didn't heal anything. It only revealed what the night had been holding together. Things still worked. Water flowed, doors opened, people woke, but everything felt delayed, heavy, like the town was carrying something it had never agreed to remember and didn't yet know how to set down. They moved like survivors, not of fire or flood, but of something harder to name. No one knew the rules yet. They only knew that something inside them had been reopened, and it wasn't finished speaking. Lena stood where it had all broken open. There was no applause, no gratitude. Because saving people doesn't make them comfortable, it makes them aware. And awareness is rarely mistaken for kindness. "My father can't sleep anymore," the man said. "Every time he closes his eyes, he's burning someone." The words weren't an attack. They were a wound looking for somewhere to land. That's when Lena understood what she had really done. The spell wasn't punishment. It was memory, returned without mercy, without filter, without the comfort of forgetting. And Greyhaven would never be the same because now it had to live with itself. The town was still learning how to breathe again when the scream cut through it. Not the sound of anger, not even grief, but terror. Sharp, raw, the kind that doesn't ask for permission before it spreads. Inside the house, there was no ritual, no omen carved in stone. Just a mother holding her child too tightly, trying to protect him from something she couldn't see and didn't understand. His name was Eli, 7 years old, and on his wrist, a mark, not tied on, not drawn, but grown, as if the body itself had decided to remember something ancient. Lena didn't need to be told what it meant. The moment her skin met his, the air changed. The room filled with voices, not loud, not cruel, but certain. "It's begun faster than expected," Era said quietly. There was no comfort in her voice, only inevitability. Because this was not an accident, it was a response. When Lena broke the old covenant, the forest didn't answer with fire. It answered with signals, sent outward, town, to places built on borrowed protection. Greyhaven was never alone. It was only first, and now, the marked were waking. Lena didn't return to the house for comfort. She returned because the silence had changed. The walls felt aware, as if they'd been waiting for her to finally come home with the right kind of eyes. The book opened where it never had. Pages sealed shut for decades loosened like they'd been holding their breath. These weren't hidden by locks or lies. They were sealed by blood, and not Maria's. Lena understood then. The seal wasn't broken. It was answered. The book hadn't been waiting for courage or knowledge. It had been waiting for her blood to mature enough to speak back. The memory returned uninvited. Lena, small, unsteady, walking into the forest at night, not led, not chased, called. And from her mouth came words no child should have learned, and no mother should ever hear.
"Not her," Maria begged. "She's just a child. Take me instead." It wasn't a prayer. It was a negotiation with something that never bargains gently.
Maria didn't just hide Lena from the coven. She broke inheritance itself. She split Lena's burden, binding fragments of it into other unborn children across distant regions. A mercy spell, dangerous, illegal, and powered by love. Those children were meant to live ordinary lives. But now the binding was failing. And they were waking, far from Greyhaven, far from forests and towns. There was a place the world forgot without being allowed to destroy. A chapel built not for worship but for containment. It still stood because something inside it refused to die. No one struck a match. No words were spoken. The fire came because it was summoned. Not by desire, but by agreement. This was not wild magic. This was routine. They emerged without ceremony. Not young, not beautiful. Powerful in the way endurance is powerful. This was what remained after centuries of purges, betrayals, and necessary sacrifices. The remaining coven. Maria broke the law of balance, Mother Calder said. Not angrily, not sadly, as a statement of fact. Balance was not belief here, it was policy. No, the witch replied. She broke our control. Silence followed, because everyone there knew the difference, and which truth frightened them more. They felt Lena awaken the way mountains feel fault lines move. The Unbound had risen, and unbound power cannot be allowed to exist freely. The decision was immediate. She would be claimed, bent back into the system, or erased. And to be certain, they chose both. It didn't happen all at once. It fractured. Conversations became sides. Sides became lines. And suddenly Greyhaven wasn't a town anymore. It was a question everyone demanded be answered differently. Some wanted Lena gone, convinced removing her would reset the world. Some believed she was salvation, the only thing standing between them and judgment. Others wanted the forest burned entirely. Certain fire could erase what memory had reopened. Old symbols returned, not remembered, but misused. Marks once meant for balance were painted like warnings, accusations, or threats. Knowledge without understanding became another weapon. People called it protection, iron charms, locked doors, rules made in panic. They told themselves it was love, even as their children learned fear before understanding. One woman locked her daughter in the cellar for safety, because fear doesn't ask whether protection is wanted, only whether it feels justified. And every act done in fear leaves a scar, even when it's called love. This wasn't new. It was familiar. The same story, the same mistakes, only faster. Fear was no longer waiting for proof or permission. Greyhaven was repeating its history, and this time, it was learning it all at once. Some truths can't be spoken in houses or towns or places that still pretend to be safe. Era led Lena into the forest, not because it listened, but because it didn't interrupt. There have been unbound witches before, Era said, not as a warning, as an admission. The words hung between them, heavier than threat, heavier than prophecy. They weren't killed by towns, not by mobs or fear or ignorance. They were killed by witches, methodically, deliberately. Because unbound power cannot be ruled, and anything that can't be ruled is seen as a threat. You terrify them more than fire ever did, Era said quietly. Fire destroys what it touches. You change what survives. And that, to those who control balance, is unforgivable. Did my mother know I would destroy this world? Lena asked. Not accusing, not afraid, just exhausted from carrying a question without an answer. No, Era said softly. She knew you would refuse to let it stay broken. The forest remained silent. Not because it disagreed, but because there was nothing left to correct. Night returned to Greyhaven, but it brought no rest with it. Darkness wasn't hiding danger, it was preparing it. Somewhere beyond sight, the coven had stopped debating, and something had been sent. They didn't send soldiers, they didn't send fire. They sent a hunter, a witch who didn't cast spells because spells can be resisted. Reflections cannot. Lena felt it before she saw it. The world was watching her back. Glass, water, polished stone. Every surface became a witness. And witnesses, once awakened, begin to judge. The reflections didn't lie. They didn't exaggerate. They showed her possibilities, paths opened by power without permission. Not monsters, not madness, just consequences waiting for her to choose wrong. This is who you become if you live, the hunter whispered. Not as a threat, as a certainty. And for a moment, Lena almost believed them. Then she heard them. Children, crying. Not nearby, not together, miles apart, all at once. The marked ones were calling her. Not for power, not for answers, but because somewhere they knew she was listening. What Lena chose next wasn't written anywhere. It wasn't a spell. It had no words to memorize, no cost to measure. It was forbidden because it couldn't be controlled. She didn't reach outward to command. She opened herself to listen. She felt them, not as names or faces, but as sensations. Fear without language, power without instruction, confusion sharp enough to ache. They weren't reaching for her. They were calling out because no one had ever answered. And finally, Lena understood what her mother died protecting. The Unbound witch was never meant to rule alone. Power held by one becomes a throne. Power shared becomes a choice. Maria didn't sacrifice herself to delay destruction. She sacrificed herself to make another way possible. "I will not carry this by myself," Lena said. Not as refusal, not as challenge, but as truth spoken plainly. And the forest, for the first time, did not resist her. Across towns, across borders, the marks changed. They weren't bindings anymore. They were connections, not ownership, not inheritance. A network of listening, awake and unowned. The forest had never wanted one witch. It wanted many, linked, aware, and free. "She's building something worse than rebellion," Mother Calder whispered, shaken. "Because rebellions can be crushed. But this had no center to destroy.